Welcome back to Fear Spiral. Do your part, like, subscribe, and leave a comment with where you are and when the darkness reached you. Each story lives on. Each comment pulls you nearer to what lurks in the shadows. Shall we? The voice in the woods. I've never considered myself the type to get spooked easily. I grew up in the suburbs, played video games late at night, watched horror movies alone, and never once thought a story like this could happen to me. But last summer I went on a solo camping trip in the woods near Pine Hollow, Arkansas, and I learned just how wrong I was. I'll start at the beginning. I had been planning this trip for months. I wanted something off the beaten path, something far enough from roads and towns that I could really disconnect. I'd heard about a trailhead near Pine Hollow that led to a large patch of forest, dense and wild, the kind where people barely ever go. It wasn't technically off-limits, but it was isolated enough that you could go all day without seeing another person. Perfect for what I wanted, solitude. I left Friday morning, drove my old truck down a winding highway and parked in the small gravel lot by the trailhead. The sun was high, the air was humid but bearable. I loaded my pack, tent, sleeping bag, food, water, flashlight, extra batteries, and a small first aid kit, and started hiking. At first it was peaceful. Birds chirping, the occasional rustle of leaves, the scent of pine and damp earth. Everything felt natural, normal. I even started whistling a little tune as I went, feeling that rare kind of freedom only found in total isolation. By the time I found a clearing that seemed suitable for setting up camp, it was late afternoon. The area was small, just enough space for my tent and a little fire pit I could safely build. I set everything up methodically. I made a small fire, cooked some canned chili, and watched the flames dance as the shadows of the trees stretched long across the ground. The woods were quiet, almost too quiet, but I brushed it off, thinking about how different this felt from the noisy life I had back home. Night fell fast, faster than I expected. The temperature dropped sharply, and the darkness became so complete that even the fire didn't seem to reach far. I decided to turn in early, crawling into my sleeping bag with the fire burning low. I was just starting to drift off when I heard it. It was faint at first, a voice calling my name. Mike. I froze. That was me, obviously. But it was impossible. I was alone. I listened carefully. The voice came again, a bit louder this time, more urgent. Mike, come here. I sat up in my sleeping bag, heart thudding. My first thought was that maybe another hiker had come into the clearing without my noticing. I had passed a few smaller paths on the way here, but the woods were empty, or at least, they seemed empty. I called back cautiously. Hello? Who's there? No response. Only the faint sound of the voice echoing as if it was somewhere further into the trees, taunting me. It was definitely human, but the tone was strange. Low, urgent, almost pleading. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but something about it sounded wrong. I grabbed my flashlight and swung it in every direction. Nothing. The trees swayed gently in the night wind, and the forest was silent except for the occasional crack of a branch. I convinced myself it must be a prank. Someone following the trail before me, maybe trying to scare campers. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling crawling along my skin. Then it came again, closer this time. Mike, help me. My blood ran cold. I wasn't expecting that. I hadn't told anyone I was coming here alone. How could someone know my name? I stumbled out of my tent, shining the flashlight in every direction. The beam caught nothing but trees, shadows, and leaves. My rational brain was screaming at me. Someone could be hurt or it could be a prank, but a deep, primal part of me whispered that this was something else entirely. I called out again. Who's there? Are you okay? There was silence for a few seconds, then, please, Mike. I swear that voice wasn't coming from a person walking through the woods. It wasn't moving. It was everywhere at once, echoing and reverberating through the trees in a way that made my head spin. I froze, trying to tell myself it was my imagination. But that voice, soft, desperate, sounded just like my sister's. I have a younger sister, Hannah. She lives in the city, hundreds of miles away. She was never going to be here. And yet, my stomach churned. The voice was her tone, her cadence, her pleading. I took a deep breath and tried to reason with myself. I forced myself to speak out loud. "Hannah? Is that you?" The forest didn't respond. For a while, nothing. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe I was just losing it. Maybe I'd been alone too long. Maybe the combination of solitude, darkness, and fatigue had conjured something my brain wanted desperately to believe. I shook my head and climbed back into my tent, telling myself I'd sleep through it, that it was all in my head. But sleep didn't come easy. I kept hearing whispers, soft and urgent, drifting through the trees. Eventually I drifted off, but not before hearing a final, distinct phrase that cut through the night. "Mike, don't leave me." I woke up at dawn, sweating and shaking. The fire had burned out. Everything looked normal in the bright light of morning. The clearing, the trees, the trail I had come from. No signs of anyone else being here. I packed up quickly, determined to leave the area, still shaken by what I'd heard. As I hiked, I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but a sense of unease lingered. The forest seemed different now, darker somehow, even in daylight. Birds kept their distance. The wind felt colder. I tried whistling, tried making noise to dispel the tension, but every sound seemed swallowed by the dense trees. Around noon, I stumbled across something strange on the trail. Small footprints, maybe a child's, leading off the main path into the thicker woods. They weren't fresh, but not old either, maybe from the night before. My first thought was relief. Maybe someone had been camping nearby, someone who had been calling for help. But then I noticed something else. The footprints didn't have heels. Every step was flat, like they'd been made by someone walking silently, softly, almost gliding. A chill ran down my spine. I followed the footprints a little, more out of curiosity than bravery. The trail led me to a small ravine, dense with underbrush. And then I heard it again. "Mike." Closer now. Not distant. Right in front of me, somewhere in the thicket. I froze. My flashlight caught the outline of something moving in the shadows. My hands shook as I pointed it, but there was nothing, just trees, just underbrush. The sound of my own breathing filled my ears, then the voice, right next to me. "Mike, come here." I spun around. Nothing. No one. My rational mind screamed at me to leave, to get out of the forest, to call someone. But I felt rooted to the spot, a strange compulsion gripping me. Something about the voice wasn't just a sound. It was a command, a pull, almost magnetic. And then I saw her, a small figure maybe 5 feet ahead, half hidden in the shadows, standing in a patch of sunlight filtering through the trees. It was a girl, young, maybe 10, 11 years old. Her hair was dark, her face pale. She was wrong, not human. Her limbs were too long, too thin, and her eyes were black. Completely black. "Mike," she whispered again. I ran. I don't even remember turning on my heels. I just bolted back down the trail, stumbling over roots and rocks, my flashlight swinging wildly. Behind me, I heard her laughter. High-pitched, tinkling, unnatural. I didn't stop until I hit the gravel parking lot. My truck was still there, perfectly normal, as if nothing had happened. But when I looked back toward the trailhead, there was nothing. The forest looked innocent again, like any other day. I sat in my truck shaking, unsure if I wanted to go back in, unsure if I could even comprehend what I had just seen. I drove home that day. I didn't tell anyone except a friend who loves horror stories. He laughed, said maybe I'd just imagined it, maybe I had. I want to believe that, I really do. But here's the thing. A week later, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small pink notebook. I opened it. On the first page, written in childish handwriting, were 3 words. "Mike, come play. I haven't been back to the woods since." I haven't been able to sleep without checking every corner of my room. And sometimes late at night I hear her voice, calling me, Mike, don't leave me. And I know somehow she's still out there, waiting. The cabin in the hollow. I've always been the type of person who enjoys camping, hiking, and being outdoors. But I've also never been great at saying no when a group of friends ropes me into something I'm only half sure about. That's exactly how I ended up spending a weekend in a cabin that I'm still not sure anyone should have survived. It started on a Friday afternoon. My 3 friends, Jordan, Claire, and Matt, had been planning this cabin trip for weeks. I'd been hesitant because I didn't know the area very well, and honestly, I prefer hiking in the daylight and sleeping in a tent with nothing but the stars above me. But they convinced me. It's remote, quiet, the perfect escape, Jordan had said. Trust me, it'll be fun. So I drove up with Matt while Claire and Jordan followed in their car. The cabin was in a place called Hollow Creek, supposedly about an hour off the main highway. The directions were vague, and our GPS kept trying to reroute us back to town, which should have been the first warning. By the time we finally arrived, the sun was setting. The gravel path leading up to the cabin wound through thick trees, and the area around the cabin itself was mostly clearings with tall pines looming around. At first glance, the cabin looked cozy. Wooden, rustic, with a stone chimney and a porch that wrapped around one side. There was no electricity, no running water, and no cell service beyond a single bar if you stood just right on the porch. It was exactly the kind of isolation my friends had been hyping up. We unloaded our packs, carried firewood inside, and tried to make the place feel like home. The cabin was small but well-maintained. 2 bedrooms, a loft, a kitchen area with a wood-burning stove, and a living area with a large stone fireplace. We lit a fire, opened some beers, and settled in. At first, everything seemed fine. Laughs, teasing, the usual group dynamic. But that first night, things started to feel off. I was the last to go to bed, and as I lay in the loft bedroom, I thought I heard a faint creaking from below. I assumed it was the cabin settling. Then I heard it again, a soft thump like someone stepping on the floorboards of the living room. I called out, Matt, Jordan? No response. I shrugged it off. Maybe one of them was up for a smoke or stretching their legs. But then I heard something else. A whisper. It wasn't any of my friends. It was soft, deliberate, and close. I froze. Help me. I sat up so fast my head hit the rafters. The whisper came again. Louder this time. Help me. My stomach dropped. I checked my phone. No service, of course. I ran down the stairs and flicked on the lantern in the living area. Nothing. Chairs were upright. The fire was just glowing in the fireplace, and the room looked completely normal. I shook my head and called out, Guys, this isn't funny. Silence. I went outside for a breath of air. The night was still except for the sound of the wind in the trees. No other voices. No flashlights from the other side of the property. It was just quiet. Too quiet. The next morning I mentioned it casually over breakfast. My friends laughed it off. You're just imagining things, Claire said, passing me a plate of scrambled eggs. This place is creepy, yeah, but nothing is alive out here except us. Jordan added, It's probably just the wind or the old cabin noises. Don't overthink it. I tried to convince myself they were right. I wanted to believe it. But that night, as soon as we were settled in again, the sounds returned. This time, there were more of them. Whispers from the walls, tapping on the windows, footsteps across the porch. It was subtle at first, easy to mistake for natural sounds, but it grew more insistent. Matt was the first to notice. He came storming into the loft, whispering urgently, Did you guys hear that? Something's moving outside. We grabbed flashlights and stepped onto the porch. The woods stretched out in every direction, dark and dense. Nothing moved. No animals, no people, just shadows. But then we saw it. Small footprints in the dirt near the porch, not ours. Tiny, barefoot, and heading into the trees. Jordan's face went pale. I didn't see anyone come in, did you? No one had. None of us had left the cabin, and the driveway had been empty since we got here. We decided to check the surrounding area, thinking maybe it was a lost kid or hiker. We took our flashlights and walked along the small clearing that led into the trees. The forest was silent except for our own crunching footsteps. Then a sound, a child's laugh, high-pitched, distant but clear. We froze. Hello? Claire called. Is someone out here? No response. Only the faint rustle of the wind and leaves. We decided to retreat back to the cabin. That night we locked the doors and kept the fire going. But the whispers continued. Sometimes when the fire flickered, I thought I saw small shadows moving just beyond the light, always staying in the periphery. Always gone when I tried to look directly at them. By the third night, the situation had escalated. Matt went out to get more firewood and he didn't come back immediately. I went to check, finding him crouched at the edge of the clearing, staring at something. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't respond at first, just pointed. There in the distance between the trees was a girl. She was standing perfectly still, looking at us. Hair dark and long, clothes dirty. I couldn't make out a face, just the shape of a small body. "Hey, are you okay?" Claire called, but she barely got the words out before the girl disappeared. Not running, not hiding, just gone. That was when the scratching started. From the windows, the walls, even under the floorboards. Constant, slow, deliberate. Like claws dragging across wood. We huddled in the living area, trying to rationalize it. Old cabin? Animals, a prank? Nothing fit. And then we noticed something terrifying. Things inside the cabin had moved. Chairs slightly shifted. The lantern on the table now on the floor. A small pile of sticks that hadn't been there before. At some point, we all agreed we had to leave. We grabbed our packs, but the keys to the truck were missing. Every time someone tried to go outside, the whispering would escalate. Soft cries, laughter, chanting. It was as if the woods themselves were alive, coaxing us to stay. Eventually, we barricaded ourselves in one bedroom. It was early morning, the faint light through the windows illuminating scratches on the walls that hadn't been there the day before. I counted them. Small, deep, hundreds of tiny claw marks looping in a pattern, almost deliberate. Then the whispering changed. Clear words right by my ear, "Stay. Forever." We didn't sleep. Not really. Just sat listening, sweating, whispering to each other, trying to stay awake. Every time someone closed their eyes, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Sometimes one of us would open our eyes to see the little girl standing in the corner of the room, staring, not moving, just watching. By afternoon, we noticed the front door. The padlock had somehow been unlocked. Hesitant, we approached. The clearing outside was normal, empty, sun shining. The truck was where we left it, keys sitting on the hood. No footprints, no evidence of anyone else. We ran to the truck and didn't stop until we hit the main highway. Once back in town, we tried to make sense of it. The cabin had no electricity, no cell reception, and no one had been around for miles. When we checked online later, we discovered something shocking. The cabin had a dark history. Multiple disappearances over decades, all in the surrounding forest. All people who went missing without a trace. Some accounts mentioned hearing a girl crying or whispers calling their names, sometimes appearing as a child in the woods. None were ever found. We never went back. I don't know if what we saw was some supernatural presence or a serial predator living in the forest. All I know is the whispers. I can still hear them sometimes at night. And sometimes I see her in my dreams, the little girl, standing in the shadows calling my name, and I know, somehow she's still out there, waiting for the next people who think a quiet cabin in the hollow is a good idea. The road that led nowhere. I've never been the type to get spooked easily. I like horror movies, true crime podcasts, and even ghost stories, but nothing I'd experienced before prepared me for that night. My friends and I, Ethan, Sarah, and Matt had decided on a last-minute road trip through rural West Virginia. It was late summer and we wanted an adventure, something different from the usual city life. We didn't plan to get terrorized, obviously. It started around 9 p.m. We were on a quiet highway driving through thick forests that seemed to go on forever. I was navigating, looking at Google Maps when Ethan said, "Hey, there's a shortcut here, looks faster." Sarah and Matt were in the back laughing, listening to music, not paying much attention. I hesitated. "It looks really rural. I don't even see a gas station for miles." Ethan waved it off. "Don't worry about it, trust me. It'll save us at least 30 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We turned off the highway onto a narrow, cracked asphalt road flanked by trees so close together it felt like a tunnel. Almost immediately, the GPS stopped working. I laughed nervously. Figures, no signal. Matt leaned forward from the back seat. "Cool. This feels like a horror movie already." I forced a chuckle. "Yeah, hilarious." At first the road seemed normal enough. just isolated. But after a few miles, things started to feel off. The road didn't seem to curve naturally. It was straight for long stretches, then suddenly took sharp turns, almost like someone had designed it to confuse drivers. We joked at first, pretending we were in a maze until the sun went down completely, and the forest around us seemed to swallow the headlights. That's when we first heard it. A voice, faint but distinct, calling from somewhere among the trees. "Hey, over here." We all froze. The voice sounded human, a woman maybe, panicked and pleading. Sarah whispered, "Is someone out there?" Ethan rolled down his window, shining a flashlight into the blackness. Nothing. No sign of a person, no lights, no movement, just trees. "Probably someone lost," I said, though my voice sounded shaky. "We're in the middle of nowhere. Maybe they're trying to flag someone down." We kept driving, a little faster now, but the feeling of being watched was growing. Shadows flickered just beyond the light of our headlights, shapes moving between the trees. Matt tried to joke. "Great, we're in a haunted forest." But even he sounded nervous. After maybe 20 minutes of driving, the road suddenly ended. Not a junction, not a clearing, just ended. Asphalt disappeared into a shallow ditch, mud and rocks blocking the way. There was no sign this road had ever led anywhere. I slammed on the brakes. "What the hell?" Ethan jumped out. "There has to be a way around it." We got out, flashlights in hand, and tried to find an alternate path. But no matter which way we walked, the trees seemed to close in. There was only the ditch ahead, and behind us the road had vanished. I checked the GPS again. Still nothing. I turned my phone on airplane mode and back on. Still no signal, no map, no clue where we were. Then the sound started, from the woods, scratching. Low, deliberate, slow. It wasn't wind, not an animal. Something, or someone, was moving toward us. "Let's go back to the car," I said, panic rising. We ran back. The headlights revealed nothing, at first. Then I saw them. Figures, tall and thin, almost blending with the trees, standing at the edge of the forest, watching. 4 of them, maybe more. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood perfectly still, staring. Sarah screamed and ran to the car. Matt and Ethan followed. I got in last, locking the doors, my heart hammering. We tried to turn around, retrace the road, but every turn seemed to bring us back to the same spot. The ditch was always there. The trees always seemed closer. And the figures. They were always at the edge, sometimes closer than before. Hours passed, though it didn't feel like it. Every time we slowed or tried to get out, the voices started, again whispering our names, calling us deeper into the forest. Sometimes a high-pitched laugh would echo behind the trees. We stayed in the car, lights on, shouting back, but it never answered with words we could understand. Only tones, calls, commands. We slept in shifts, too scared to turn off the headlights. When morning came, I thought maybe we could finally escape. But the road had changed. Where the ditch had been yesterday, there was now a hill completely blocking us. Every route looked like it had been altered while we slept. At this point, we started seeing signs that this wasn't random. Little things at first. A stick placed in a circle like someone had been marking our path, deep scratches on tree trunks forming arrows pointing one way. The same footprints we'd glimpsed around the ditch. Not human footprints. Something with long toes, wide and flat, barely touching the ground but unmistakably following us. We argued about what to do. Ethan suggested walking through the woods. Sarah and Matt didn't want to move. I felt trapped, cornered, and panicked. Eventually I convinced them to hike, just to try to find the highway. We walked for hours. The forest didn't change, but the road reappeared occasionally, leading us deeper into the woods rather than out. Then it happened. We reached a small clearing. A car was there. A beat-up sedan, doors open, keys in the ignition. It looked abandoned. Relief washed over us, but I had a bad feeling. "I'll drive," I said. I got in, started the car. Matt and Ethan jumped in the back. Sarah sat beside me. We started driving, the headlights cutting through the darkness. For the first few minutes, it seemed okay. Then the whispering started again, louder this time from all directions. Come, come, come. The road twisted impossibly. Each curve brought us right back to the same clearing. The car started to stall. Lights flickered. Engine cut out completely. I tried to restart it, nothing. From the tree line, I saw them again. The tall figures, dozens now, standing silently. Their faces, I didn't get a good look. Shadows, really. Just elongated silhouettes. One of them moved toward the car, gliding more than walking. We panicked. Sarah started screaming. Ethan tried opening his door, but the figure was suddenly right there at the window, tall and impossibly thin. Matt pushed him down. I finally noticed something chilling. The trees weren't normal. They were aligned. Every trunk, every branch, every shadow perfectly placed, like someone had built this environment deliberately, designed to trap us, to manipulate us, to keep us disoriented. We ran, leaving the car behind, following a path we thought led out. Branches scratched our arms and faces. The whispers followed, a voice soft and insistent. You can't leave. By now we were exhausted, terrified, and then we saw it, a gate. Wooden, rusty, overgrown, but a gate nonetheless. It opened onto a highway. I almost collapsed with relief. We ran out, screaming, waving our arms. Cars passed. People stared. We made it to a gas station, drenched, bleeding from scratches, hearts racing. We told the attendants what happened. They stared blankly. One older man said, "You don't want to go back there. Nobody ever does." I don't know what we experienced. A hidden area? A trap set by someone, something, or a forest that somehow warped reality? All I know is that we didn't stop until we reached town. Even now, months later, I can't sleep without checking the shadows outside my window, and sometimes when I close my eyes I hear the whisper, "Come back." And I know somehow that road is still out there, waiting for the next people foolish enough to drive into it.